Hi, Liza. So let's talk about this report that we've put together on digital critical pedagogies and what we really want the Middlesex community to take from our report. So how would you explain the project to somebody that knew nothing about it? How would you explain it?
Yeah, so the aim of the project really is to examine how learning and teaching of equality, diversity and inclusion in the university and in courses can be enhanced through digital critical pedagogy. And practically, when we think about critical pedagogies, they depend on establishing meaningful connections between our everyday lived experiences and theory as it is encountered in academic spaces. And when we think about today's world of mobile learning and social media, we might argue that these connections can be forged even more readily with learners themselves developing the content, and that creates a dialogue between theory and the world around them, rather than just simply relying on teachers' chosen words and images. But we also know that teachers and learners have encountered various issues enabling such connections between these everyday experiences and theories encountered. So really, it's crucial that we develop a better understanding of the platforms and the practices that facilitate effective digital critical pedagogy. And that's what we're really just hoping to do in this project. So I don't know if there's anything more that you wanted to add.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just so aware that colleagues, with the big shift to online as a result of COVID, that sometimes they were feeling like the digital pedagogies were working and sometimes it wasn't feeling so meaningful or so connected. So I feel like one thing we can bring with this project is, how do you turn digital pedagogies into digital critical pedagogies so that they feel like this really meaningful experience, just as you said, where you're connecting the everyday experiences with what you're learning in a university context. And with this particular bit of the project, we were doing a literature review, weren't we?
Yeah.
Do you want to just say a little bit about kind of our approach to that literature review? None of the detail, but just like what we were trying to do.
Yeah, so the literature review, we kind of did a search through it. We searched through many different papers, different articles, and we had a list of about, I think it was 34 papers, and we disconnected 9 of them. And it was kind of provided like a rationale for the research that we were looking for, and then using the themes that we found, some emergent themes that we found from that review that we used to form this report, really.
Fantastic. And we'll come to those themes, won't we? But just before we do, I think it's important to say about our advisory group. Because all the way through doing the literature review on digital critical pedagogies, we had this amazing advisory group, didn't we? Interdisciplinary, from across the university, really diverse. What did you feel about that advisory group process, working with the advisory group?
Like you said, so our advisory group was made up, I think there were 12 Middlesex University academics from across the university disciplines, like you've said. And really they were an integral part of making sense of the literature included in the review. So they played a part really in shaping the search terms that we use, advising on additional literature to include, and really developing our understanding of the emergent themes. So they really were key and essential to the project. And I think we really managed to make it work well for us. And we kind of structured team meetings using Zoom, and ensuring like dates and agendas were set out before, so we could really make the most of every meeting. I feel like we really wanted it to be as interactive as it could be, and ensure that members of the team could approach us and feel free to approach us in between meetings. So we use things like Padlet and stuff to keep the conversation going, and and make sure the dialogue was flowing in between the meetings, and they could contact us whenever they wanted with any literature, which they really did. So it worked really well. Yeah,
definitely. And I love that sense of like, every meeting that we had, I really felt like we got into the reflections of how it actually felt to do these digital critical pedagogies, not just like reflections on what we were finding from the literature review, but connecting back to people's experiences. And it made me think, you know, that this project really has great value in just enabling those spaces for reflection.
Yeah, and I also felt, and it was kind of relevant, very relevant to the time as well. And I think anything that's kind of timely is really important and useful as well. Yeah.
Definitely, because people need a space, don't they, in which to like reflect on. You know, you can't just shift everything online, get it all online and do it. At some point you need to pause and go, okay, how are we doing this, and how is it working, and how is it maybe not working for us, and is it still meaningful, and all those things. All right, so we mentioned the emergent themes. So we did this literature review, we got these 5 emergent themes, and people can read about those in detail in the report. But of all of those themes and our findings, what was most interesting to you?
So I thought it was very interesting, the themes that came out of it. And one of the emergent themes that from a review which I found most interesting was about the complexities of managing the creation of the safe space online, and really kind of putting forward the question of where does that balance lie between safety and sanitization. And the literature kind of discusses this quite a lot by considering that rather than seeing the safe space as something that the teacher creates for the learners, it's more the approach to create a context in which the learners can kind of care for themselves and each other, and that caring is seen as part of the pedagogical work rather than something separate from that. And it kind of led into one of the other themes of pedagogical risk-taking, and that the idea of the teacher as well, the teacher's risk-taking as well depends on the creation of a safe space in learning and teaching for productive failure. I found that really interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nice kind of parallel resonance between the students and the teachers. You know, we need these spaces that are safe, but not completely safe from any risk. They're safe in that they're supportive, but they also enable risk-taking. And it's the same for us as teachers, isn't it? We need a chance to get things a bit wrong sometimes, and for it to be okay. And I connected so much with that sense of safe space and those discussions around safe space, particularly when it came to like the social media. Whether you could bring social media, or how you could bring social media into your teaching, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, and the complexities of trying to do that while still keeping your students relatively safe.
And I thought there were some really interesting reflections from teachers and lecturers from around the world about their responses to it as well, which was interesting.
And that kind of key message of social media is this huge resource for teaching and learning, but it really requires you to think about like how you want to use it and how you're going to help students to negotiate using social media. Like it's not so much going for it, but at the same time you need to be a little bit not careful. You can take the risks, but kind of you need to be aware of Fantastic. Okay, so our next steps. What do you see as our next steps?
Okay, so I think that the findings that are offered in the review are kind of really just the starting point for future dialogue and initiatives. We didn't really want to offer it up as a knowledge report, you know, based on facts and things like that. So the themes that we identify from the review can be seen, like I said, as points for reflection on practice, which hopefully can impact more positively on learning and teaching practices in both the Middlesex University and further afield. So our next steps following on from the literature review, we are going to do an interview study with academics at Middlesex University, and hopefully the findings from this will help us to inform and develop a collaborative innovation workshop, just to develop some recommendations of how digital critical pedagogy can enhance learning and teaching dialogues about equality, diversity and inclusion, and how they can be more systematically advanced in the university and in higher education more broadly. So I definitely see that as being our next steps.
Fabulous, me too. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. I think it's as much as possible just about carving out these reflective spaces, essentially carving out a community of practice
Yeah.
around digital pedagogies, doing digital pedagogies in a way that we can feel really proud of, I think, in years to come.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Faiza. That was a great chat.
Yeah, thank you.